What's up, design family, and welcome back to another episode of Fittdesign TV. So glad to have you back on the channel. On today's episode, we'll be looking at how you guys can acquire your first set of paying or actual clients as a fashion designer, as a creative designer, a logo designer, pretty much any form of design creative. Really, in this day and age, and with this amount of competition, it can be a little bit intimidating as to where does one start. And coming out of college or coming out of a fresh education, you can be a little bit intimidated by those who have already kickstarted their careers, who already have an established business. On today's episode, I'll be giving you guys my top tips specifically from my own practice, how I came from 0 clients to a global agency in terms of what we are today, in terms of how I structured step by step my portfolio, my online presence, how I provided value, and ultimately how I was able to attract clients without actually having to even ask them for it. What's up, design family, and welcome to Fittdesign TV. So glad to have you here. On this channel, we discuss all things sports fashion, graphic design, manufacturing, and technology. We'll discuss key topics, answer pressing questions, and provide actionable steps on starting your own product line. If you're interested in any of the above topics, stick around. You're in for a good one. Guys, in short, acquiring clients is probably going to be one of the most essential parts of your business strategy. Let's face it, without a proper paying client base, we're just hobbyists at the end of the day. So if you want to turn your passion into a business, you need to generate cash flow. And in order to do so, there's 5 key things that I want to introduce you and to get you to start thinking about today. Number 1, and most importantly, is you need to have the confidence in yourself in terms of how you present yourself as a professional creative designer. There's something to be said, and I've seen it before. Those who are in the beginning of their career, they often are asked, what do you do for a living? Well, they might say, I went to school for graphic design, but I'm sort of doing this graphic design thing or this logo design thing on the side. They say it with such a lack of confidence that they honestly instill that lack of confidence into their potential customers. Even before you've made it, you need to have the belief in yourself and your ability to provide value to the market and your ability to build actually what your customers want and communicate that in a way that's direct, professional, and to the point. So when someone approaches you and asks you, hey, I'm interested in creating a branding set for my business, you need to approach it with a sense of, yes, this is something I can definitely help you with. This is exactly what I'm here to do. This is how I structure my business X, Y, Z. If this is what you're looking for, amazing. If not, no worries. When you actually exude this confidence and you're communicating yourself in a way that's professional, you put into the mind of your potential customers that there must be a reason for this confidence, and it almost puts it into their minds that yes, this is something and this is someone worth working for or worth working with. Number 2, when it comes to building yourself up as a creative designer and as a professional designer, you need to do 2 core things. Number 1, invest in yourself. And 2, take the time to build up a strong online presence and portfolio. So what does it mean to invest in yourself? I remember in the early days of my fit design practice, every single dollar, every single cent that I would earn into the business, I would reinvest back into equipment. I'd reinvest back into the time that I could spend. I'd ultimately keep pumping money into the business with anything that I made just to keep improving and upgrading it. Honestly, this is still my mindset to this day. But that investment that you make, that investment to build a beautiful website for yourself. And I remember this, one of the first big projects that I took on was to build a full-fledged website for Fittdesign.com at a time when I was merely freelancing. I knew that I wanted this thing to grow beyond myself into a proper agency with employees, with hierarchy, with structure, and even at the early stage where I was still working out of my apartment, I knew that I need to build a website for my customers to be able to find me, for them to be able to browse my services, and just in general to open up and to structure myself as a professional agency, even if I wasn't there at that moment. Also, focus on building an online presence. This, of course, in this day and age is something that we all understand, but what does it mean? Let me take you guys back to 2015. For a full year, and I've recounted this story on my channel before, I used to post a single creative design, a single full outfit design, top, bottom, shoes, bags, every single day on the website and on the Instagram. Day in, day out, I would post. Obviously, I wasn't making money from this. All I was doing was I was building up my online portfolio, my online presence. I would post stories, I would engage with my audience, I would provide value and expect nothing in return. And by the end of that year, we had grown to 10,000 followers on Instagram. And ultimately, I was able to structure a great portfolio that new customers could come directly onto my Instagram page. They're able to see, they're able to have a backlog of all the work that I had done. This is so crucially important. People do their research, especially when they're choosing to engage with potential designers. If you don't have a portfolio that's worth showing, they're not going to work with you. Take the time, spend the time to build up that backlog of work, even if it's unpaid work, so that you have something to show. You have a visual representation of your talents and your abilities. Talk is cheap when it comes to design. Execution is everything. Number 3 is a little bit counterintuitive, especially on the topic of getting paid customers and paid clients. But this is to actually pursue free work, and pay attention a little bit. What does it mean to pursue free work? Well, number 1, it should be of your own will. You should be able to approach clients that you actually want to work with, clients that will fit your portfolio in the direction of your brand. This is so fundamentally true for a business like ours. Number 1, because I'm not a fashion designer. I didn't go to school for fashion design. So what place did I have in the fashion design world offering people my fashion design services? Well, I needed to provide that value first without any expectation in return. And that's actually what I did for the first full year of my business. The brands that we work with today, some of our biggest accounts, and I mean our biggest accounts, are based off of the backs of almost a year of free work, day in, day out. I've structured some of the strongest connections with great entrepreneurs all over the world by doing consistent work with zero expectation in return, and consistently showing my value, providing, building up my skill sets, using this client as a backbone to get other clients. So because this customer was such a large customer, I was also able to use that work as a position for myself, sort of as a proof of concept to work with other brands, and at the same time working with this brand and ultimately building up my reputation, and then capturing them as a lead account in our business and continuously growing those accounts, because one lead account leads to another account, which leads to a third, a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth. This is the power of compounding interest, where the interest is the time, the sweat, the equity that you put in, and the rewards you reap a couple of years down the line. Number 4 is the idea that time waits for no man or no woman. So if you want something, go after it. And there's 2 core ways to look at this. Number 1 is you can actually go ahead and reach out to people that you want to work with. Whether you want to freelance for local design agencies, whether you want to work with brands XYZ, whether you want a full-time job, actually doing the actions that you need, sending out that job or applying for that position or sending that DM, that's the first step. Most people are even too lazy to go ahead and do that. They have such a defeatist mindset of, I don't have any experience, I don't have a customer backlog, I don't have a website, I don't have a portfolio. Why should I even try? And honestly, if you haven't done those things yet, why should you even try? So do the work, build that website, make that portfolio, take those headshots, do that free work. The second thing is I provided value upfront. So in order to capture my customers, I got up every day and I did something. I actually went out and positioned myself as a professional designer. I made something of myself every single day, and I watched as the returns or the compounding effects of my work began to reap rewards bit by bit by bit. So all of this is to say, if you want to get your paying customers, you have to do. What do you have to do? Anything. Anything is better than nothing. And then that's when you figure out how to target yourself. At least get in the habit of doing, of designing, of creating, of reaching out, of networking, of connecting. Even if you're horrible at it, put the motion or the actions into motion and then iterate. Most people are so focused on the perfect aspect. Like, what can I do today that would be perfect? What can I do today that will 100% get me results XYZ? And the reality is you can do nothing that is going to guarantee a specific result. Even to this day, with the position that I'm in the company that I built, I go into every single interaction, every single negotiation with zero expectation of what I can get out of it. I know what I can provide. I do the action, I do the work. And if it reaps the rewards, amazing. If it doesn't, I move on. Number 5, in the early days of the business, and even in some of the later days, consider bartering your value for exchanged value. So what does this mean? I mentioned doing free work, and This can sort of be looked at as a barter. You barter your experience, your knowledge, your time, your effort in exchange for something that you also deem of value. In my specific situation, I was building up my portfolio, and at the same time, I was building up my online presence. So I was bartering my work, my free work that I was offering, in exchange for exposure. And I know this word is so overplayed. What does exposure mean? Well, number one is you pick your exposure, right? If someone offers you exposure, what does that mean? If it's something that you're willing to go for, amazing. If it's not, there's no obligation for you to accept that exposure. But I knew the brands that I want to work with, and I knew that the exposure of working with brands XYZ would benefit me, and it has benefited me. And the brands that I didn't want to work with, I wouldn't accept an exchange of free work for exposure. So it's also about the autonomy to make that decision. But consider your value in the early days as a bartering tool that you can use for something that is more than just financial. Believe me, you're building the foundation in the early days. Don't look at every single interaction as a direct transaction of service for cash. You will get there. And I promise you that the more you build a strong foundation, the easier it will be to go into every single negotiation, to ask for the price that you're worth, and ultimately to build the deal that you want. Okay guys, that is a wrap on this episode. To recap quickly, the 5 key elements to build up your first set of paying customers. And I emphasize that this is about building your foundational base first in order to have a strong house or castle or whatever you deem your business to be. And number 1 is to confidently present yourself as a professional designer who does this for a living. You're not just a hobbyist, you're someone who earns a living off of the back of the hard work that you do day in, day out. 2, make sure you're always investing in yourself, in your business, and ultimately building a strong and formidable online presence. 3, don't look at free work as lost time. Look at it as a potential to build strong, meaningful relationships, to build a portfolio that you're proud of, and ultimately to sow the seeds for future growth and future opportunities. 4 is to make sure that you're doing a specific action every day that's getting you closer and closer to your achieved or your desired result. And if your result is to get a paying customer base, then what are you doing every day to actually make that happen? And then lastly is look at the value you provide as a bartering tool for things beyond just cash. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Honestly, these are personal lessons that I've learned through grit and just through trial and error along the way. So I do fundamentally believe in them, and hopefully you guys have learned a thing or two from this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Fit Design TV. Until next week's episode, stay awesome.